and welcome to the Change Management course. Think about any big change your company has been going through. A new system, a new process, a new way of doing work, or maybe a software rollout, a company restructure, or a shift in how a team operates. Now ask yourself, did it go smoothly? Did people actually use that new way of system? Did they follow the new process, or did things slowly go back to the way it were actually before? If things did not go as planned, you are not alone. According to McKinsey & Company, 70% of all change effort failed to deliver what they were designed to deliver at the first place. But here's the important thing. They do not fail because the idea was bad. They failed because no one properly had the people side to go through the change. And that is exactly what change management fixes here. Change management is a structured way of making sure that when the organization makes a change, the people side is informed, prepared, supported, and truly ready for the change in a new way. And the difference makes it enormous. Research from Porsche, one of the world's leading change management research organizations, found that when the change management is done excellent, 88% of projects meet or exceed their goals. But when the change management is done poorly or missing, only 13% of projects succeeded. This is a 7 times better chance of success by just handling the people side of change well. The need of this skill is growing fast. A 2024 Gartner survey of 473 HR leaders found that 74% of managers are not equipped to handle the changes in the organization today. And since 2020, 78% of employees have experienced more frequent workplace changes, meaning this is not a once-in-a-while change anymore. It is something organizations face every single day. In this course, we will build a foundation in change management step by step. You will learn what change management actually is and why it exists. You will understand why change management efforts fail and exactly where the problem happens. You will learn the ADKAR model, the most widely used change management framework in the world, which gives you a clear picture, a step-by-step way to help people go through it. We will cover how to handle resistance and how to communicate clearly, how to plan and organize a change effort, and how to measure whether it's actually working or not. By the end of this course, you will not just understand the change management, you will know how to apply it. You will be having the skills to help your organization to go through the change in the way it actually should stick. But before we move on, let me share something exciting with you guys. If you are serious about building a strong career in project management, then PMP certification training in collaboration with Simplilearn can be a great step for you. This course is designed to help you understand project management in a practical, structured, and exam-focused way. You will understand the concepts like project planning, work breakdown structure, resource allocation, Gantt chart, risk and issue management, stakeholder communication, cost and budget planning, schedule planning, agile, hybrid delivery, leadership, government, and value-based project deliveries. What makes this course even more useful is that it covers modern project management skills like Gen AI in project management, sustainability, business value, and real-world decision-making. So whether you are a project manager, team lead, software developer, project executive, engineer, or someone who wants to move into the project management, so this course can help you build confidence, structure, skill that needs to manage project better and grow in your career. Hello everyone, welcome to Change Management course. Every organization at some point goes through changes. A new system, a new process, a new restructure, or a shift in how works get done. And yet, studies after studies shows majority of these changes do not deliver the result they were designed to create. Not because the idea was wrong, but because the people side of change was not handled well. Change management is a discipline that closes that gap. It is a structured, proven approach to help individuals and organizations move from where they are today to where they need to be, while making sure people are informed, supported, and genuinely ready to make that change. In this course, we will build that capability from ground up. We'll start with the core concept, move into practical framework and tools, and finish with the organizational structure that make changes last. No prior experience is needed. Just bring your focus and we will take care of the rest. Now, before we move further, let us get very clear on what we'll walk away from this course, because clarity on outcome is what turns learning into the real capability. By the end of this course, you will be able to clearly define the change management in professional context and explain its direct impact on businesses. Identify why change management fail, not at a surface level, but by identifying the exact breakdown in adoption. Apply the ADKAR model in the practical way to drive an individual behavior change across real team. Design targeted communication, training, and stakeholder strategies that move people from awareness to full adoption. Build structure end-to-end change management plan that works together with project evaluation. Measure change success using both adoption metrics and business outcomes, and take corrective action when needed. Sustain change over time by embedding new behavior into system, culture, and day-to-day operations. These are the outcomes. And when you look into that list, you will notice something. Every single one of them is practical. It is not a theory course. Everything you learn here is designed to be used. Let us talk about how we are going to go there. So what we'll cover in this course? This course is organized into 4 modules. Module number 1, that is Foundation of Change Management, will cover what change management is, why changes fail, and introduce the ADKAR model, the core framework used throughout this course. And then we have module number 2, that is Driving Individual Change. We go deeper into ADKAR model in practical and learn how to handle resistance and build communication strategies that actually work. And after that, we'll go to the module number 3, that is Managing Organizational Change. We'll scale up to the organizational level, build change plan, analyzing stakeholder, assessing impact, and bringing change management into the project from day 1. And after that, we have the last module, and that is module number 4, that is Sustaining and Measuring Change. We'll close with how to make change stick, tracking adoption, measuring result, and building long-term change capabilities inside your organization. Now with the full picture in front of you, it's time to get into the work. Module number 1, where everything begins, with the foundation question of what change management actually is, why it exists, and why it matters more than the organization realizes. So let's go. Welcome to this course of change management. If you ever have been a part of a project that went live on time, within budget, technically perfect, and then quietly failed because no one actually used it, you have experienced what happens when change management is absent. And that is exactly what this course is here to address. Change management is one of the most strategically critical disciplines in the modern organization. It is the structured approach of moving teams, departments, and entire organization from the current state to the desired future state, while ensuring that the people are prepared, equipped, and supported to make that transition successfully. In this first module, we are building the foundation. We'll cover what change management actually means in an organizational context, why change effort fails at a systematic level, how change management differs from the project management, and what does the core framework look like the professional uses to measure their approach. By the end of this course, you will be having a clear mental picture why change management actually exists, what it does, and why it matters to every project, program, and transformation of your organizational undertakes. Before we go into the content, let us be precise about what we'll be able to do after completing this module. You'll be able to define change management in professional terms and explain its organizational purpose. You'll be able to define the most common reason organizational change effort with enough detail to recognize those patterns in real environment. You will understand the ADKAR model, a structured goal-oriented framework that describes the 5 outcomes every individual must achieve to successfully adopt a change. You'll be able to explain the distinction between the project management and change management and why both are required for organizational success. And you will be able to explain the business case of change management, which is a critical capability anytime you need to get stakeholder support. These are the learning target. Everything in this module is designed to help you to achieve them. So let us start with the most important insight in the entire course. Organizations do not change. People within organization change. Think about that carefully. When you say an organization is implementing a new system, restructuring a department, or launching a new operating model, what we are actually describing is a situation where a large number of individuals are being asked to do their work differently, to use different tools, to follow different process, to take a decision in a new way, to work with different people. The organization is an idea. The people inside it are real. A change only happens when those real people actually shift their behavior. This distinction is foundational. It tells us that successful technology implementation is not measured by whether the system is live, it is measured by whether people who are supposed to use it are using correctly and constantly. A success restructure is not complete when the organizational chart is redrawn. It completes when the new roles are being performed with the clarity and effectiveness. This people-focused definition of change is what separates the change management from project management. Project management asks, did we deliver the solution? Change management asks, are people using it? Are they performing it in their new way? Is the organization actually using it in their behavior? The business consequences of this distinction is enormous. Organizations spend thousands of millions of dollars on transition every day. Research constantly shows that the gap between the project management and the actual benefit is primarily the people adoption gap, not the technology gap, not a design gap, not a gap in how thoughtfully a human side is shaped. Change management closes that gap. Now let's talk about why change management fails. This section tends to be the most immediately recognizable for the professionals, because one of us have lived through at least one of these failure patterns. The first and the common reason change fail is the absence of active and visible leadership support. When senior leaders are not visibly and constantly standing behind the change, the organization interprets the absence as a signal that the change is optional or temporary, and the optional changes do not get adopted. It is not about leaders sending a single mail at launch. Active and visible support means leaders are present in conversation, they are removing barriers, they are adjusting priorities, and their behavior signals alignment with what they are actually asking others to do. The second reason is unmanaged resistance. Resistance to change is normal, predictable, and critically rational. People resist when they do not understand why the change is happening, when they fear losing something they value, or when they have been through previous change that failed to deliver what was promised. When the resistance is ignored or dismissed, it does not disappear. It goes underground and becomes far more difficult to address. The third reason is neglecting people's side entirely. Many organizations focus their planning and investing almost exclusively on technical and process element of the change. Communication is treated as an announcement, not as a strategy. Training is a checkbox, not a capability building program. The result is a technically excellent solution that no one knows how to use, or that people are using it in the wrong way. The fourth reason is change saturation. Today's organizations are managing more simultaneous changes at every point of time in history. When the employees are being asked to absorb 5 major changes at the same time, their capability is exceeded. They cannot prioritize, they cannot process, they cannot perform. Without deliberate change portfolio managing, sequencing, prioritizing, and spacing major changes, organization accidentally exhaust the people they depend on to make the change happen. The fifth reason is poor communication. Not sufficient volume of communication. Most organizations over-communicate, but poor quality and targeting. Effective change communication is a specific role-relevant, answer the personal question of how change affects me and comes from the right sender. A general announcement from a project team carries far less credibility and impact than the direct communication with the trusted manager. Change management framework provides the structure that allows practitioners to move from intuition to method. The most widely applied individual change model in the world is ADKAR model, which stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. ADKAR describes 5 sequential outcomes that every individual must achieve in order to successfully adopt the change. The sequence is critical. You cannot skip elements. Each one is built on the previous one. Awareness is understanding of why change is necessary. It answers what is changing, why it is happening right now, what is the risk of cost of not changing. Without awareness, individuals have no context of why they are being asked to behave differently, and the absence of context breeds humor, anxiety, and resistance. Desire is a personal motivation to support and engage with the change. Awareness creates the context. Desire is the individual's internal decision about whether to engage. This is the most nuanced element because you can inform people, but you cannot compel their motivation. Desire is influenced by what individuals stand to gain, what they stand to lose, the degree of which they trust the organization intentions, and the behavior of their leader and manager around them. Knowledge is understanding of how to change, the skill, the process, and the new behavior required. This is where the learning and development intersects with the change management. Knowledge without desire is not sufficient. People who have skills but do not have motivation will not apply them. Both must be applied. Ability is a demonstrated capability to implement the change at the required level of performance. Ability is not the same as knowledge. Someone can know how a new process works and is still unable to execute it smoothly under the real working condition with the real working pressure and real consequences. Ability requires practice, feedback, and support, not just instructions. Reinforcement is a sustained support. Recognition, accountability, and corrective feedback that ensures the new behavior becomes the standard rather than reverting to the old way. Without reinforcement, adoption erodes. The old habit returns. The investment in the change delivers no lasting results. ADKAR gives the practitioners both the framework for designing change intervention and a diagnostic tool. When the change is struggling, you can identify exactly which ADKAR element is the barrier and design a targeted response. One of the most practically important distinctions in this course is understanding how change management and project management differ and how they must work together. Project management answers the question, how do we design, build, deliver the solution? It focuses on scope, schedule, cost, quality, and risk. The deliverable is a tangible output, a system, a process, a structure, a product. Change management answers the question, how do we prepare, equip, and support the people who need to adopt and use the solution? It focuses on awareness, motivation, capability, and behavior. The deliverables is an option. People performing in a new way at a required level of ability. Neither discipline is subordinate to the other. A technically perfect solution that has no use delivers zero organizational value. Strong change management applied to the poorly designed solution is equally inefficient. Excellence in both, running as integrated, parallel work stream, is what drives project success and realization of intended business benefits. The practical implementation is that the change management must be built into the project from the beginning, not added at the end. The most common change management failure pattern is the project team that delivers technical excellence at live go, and then discovers that 6 months later, the business benefit has no materialized because change management work was neither absent nor too late to affect the adoption. Efficient change management starts with the project definition phase and continues through sustainment long after go live. Each change effort involves 4 critical stakeholders group. Understanding their role is essential. Senior leaders and sponsors are responsible for the organizational outcome of the change. Their primary responsibility is to be visibly and actively aligned with the change, authorizing resources, communicating with convenience, removing barriers, and modeling the behavior they expect from others. Managers and supervisors are the most influential change agent in the organization. Their teams look to them constantly for signal about whether the change is real, important, and sustainable. Managers translate organizational direction into personal context. A manager who is privately skeptical about the change will transmit that skepticism to their team, regardless of what they are saying in the meeting. Employees are the primary adoption group. Their behavior, whether they'll adopt and sustain a new way of working, is the ultimate measure of change success. And the change management team, whether a dedicated function, a project resource, or HR business partner, is responsible for designing and executing the strategy that enables adoption across the 3 groups. On the business case, the data is strong. Studies constantly show that the organization with a strong and structured change management are significantly more likely to meet their project objectives, delivers on time, and realizes the full intention of the business value. The organization that treats the change management as the afterthought constantly underperform their transformation investment. Change management is not overhead. It is the core performance driver. Change is a phenomenon. Organizations do not change, individuals within them do. Change fails when the sponsorship is absent, resistance is unmanaged, and people side is neglected. Change saturation occurs or communication is poor. ADKAR provides a sequential diagnostic framework: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. Project management builds the solution. Change management delivers the adoption. Both are essential. These fundamentals are the lens through which everything in this course is viewed. Module 2 is where this course shifted from conceptual to operational. We are spending this module on one of the most demanding challenges in any challenge effort, driving change at the individual level, because here's the reality. When you are leading a change in your organization, you are not changing 500 people. You're changing the one person 500 times. Every individual have a different starting point, a different set of concerns, a different relationship to the changes, and a different pace of processing their thoughts. Understanding how to work with that complexity systematically at that scale is defining the skill of the effective change management professional. In this module, we will go deeper into each EdCar element, not just defining it, but understanding how to build a real group. We will examine resistance as its root, what causes it, what it looks like, and how to address it efficiently without suppressing it. We will cover communication strategy, one of the most misunderstood disciplines in change management. We will close with the role of the leadership and alignment between the individual and organizational goals. This is where the theory becomes the toolkit. After completing this module, you will be able to apply each EdCar model at tactical precision, designing a specific intervention for each building block rather than just generic responses. You will be able to identify the root cause of resistance in the specific situation and select an appropriate response strategy. You'll be able to design a change communication plan that is segmented by the audience, matched to the right sender, and oriented towards specific EdCar outcome. You'll be able to explain the distinct role of senior leadership and people manager in driving change and describe what effective behavior looks like in each role. And you will understand how misalignment between individual goal and organizational direction creates resistance and how to build a bridge that closes that gap. These are the practitioner level capabilities. By the end of this module, you'll be operating at professional level of change management depth. Awareness sounds simple. Tell people what is changing, but building genuine effective awareness in an organizational group is a complex communication challenge. Awareness has three dimensions. The first is understanding of the nature of the change. What is specifically changing? By whom? And when? The second is understanding the business rationale. Why organization is making these changes? What problem it is solving? What opportunity it captures? The third one is understanding the risk of not changing. What happens to the organization, the team, and the individual if the change does not succeed? Most organizational communication address only the first dimension. They announce what is happening without providing the adequate context of why. And when people do not understand why, they fill the gap with their own assumptions, which is almost always more threatening than the reality. Building awareness effectively requires three principles. First, the right sender. Research constantly shows that the employees want to hear business rationale for changing their seniors leader. They want to understand the personal impact from their direct manager. Routing all awareness communication through project team and HR creates a credibility mismatch that decreases the message's impact. Second is repetition. Repetition across multiple channels. A single announcement does not create awareness. People need to encounter the message multiple times through multiple formats. A town hall, a team meeting, a written update, or a short video before it fully registers. Build a communication schedule, not a single broadcast. Third, announce specifically. Different employee groups have different relationship with the change. The awareness message from the frontline operation team is different from the awareness message from the different management team. Tailoring the message for each audience specifically for their context dramatically increases the effectiveness. The test of awareness is simple. Can each member of the target group articulate in their own words what is changing, what exactly is happening, what is the step? If not, awareness is incomplete. Desire is where change management becomes genuinely difficult because desire cannot be manufactured. It is the individual's personal decision about whether they want to engage and support the change, and it is influenced by factors what deeply personal, often emotional, and not fully within the control of any change team. Four key factors influence desire. The first is nature of change in itself, specifically how much disruption it creates for the individual. A change that requires minimal adjustment to existing work pattern to create far less resistance to desire than one that fundamentally alert how someone does their job, what skills are required to them. The second factor is organizational context. In high-trust organizations have track record for following commitments and acting integrity. Desire builds more readably. In low-trust environment, where the employees have been through multiple change effort that were launched for fanfare and then quietly abandoned. Every new change starts with the deflect. Employees are not critical for no reason. They have learned from their experiences. The third factor is individual's personal situation. Their career stage, their relationship with their manager, and the risk of tolerance, their previous experience with the change. Two people in the same team facing the same change have completely different desired path based on their personal context. The fourth factor, and the most actionable, it is the VIIFM. What is in it for me? This is not a selfish question. It is an entire rational question that every employee is asked when they evaluate whether to support the change. What to gain? What do I risk? What does success look like for me in this personally? The people manager plays the most critical role in the desired stage. Research constantly identifies direct managers as the most influential factor in the individual desire. A manager who is genuinely committed to change, who talks about the positivity, who creates the space for the employees to ask questions and voice concern, and who visibly models the new behavior. The manager dramatically accelerates desire across the team. A manager who is passive, doubtful, or quietly resists transmits those attitudes to their team regardless of what they say practically. This is why equipping manager is not optional. They are the primary desire architecture for your organization. Knowledge is a training and learning dimension of the ADKAR model, but it is more nuanced when simply providing a training program. Effective knowledge building requires three considerations. First, differentiation by role. Different employee groups need different depth of knowledge about the change. A frontline user of a new system needs a different training content than a manager who needs to coach their team through adoption. Generic training that tries to serve every audience typically serve none of them. Second, timing. Training too far in advance of what employees will actually apply in their behavior results in knowledge loss. They learn the content, but by the time they need to use it, they have forgotten the details. Training too close to go live creates cognizant overload and anxiety. Effective learning management sequences training to be as close as possible to when the knowledge is actually be applied, often referred to as just in the timing learning. The third is format. Not all knowledge transfer happens through formal training. Job ads, reference guide, decision tree, quick start guides, and short explainer video can also be more effective than the classroom instructions for step-by-step knowledge that employees will need to refer repeatedly during the adoption period. Ability is a bridge between the knowledge and doing, and that bridge is built through practice. An employee can attend training, perform well on assessment, and still struggle when they are actually going to execute it under the real work condition. This is not a training failure. It is a practical gap. Ability development requires supervised practice environment when the mistakes are low risk. It requires peer support network and accessible subject matter expert who can answer the specific question in the moment. It requires a job ad that reduces the mental load during the transition period. And it requires patience because the performance dip during adoption is real and temporary. Without deliberate reinforcement, adoption erodes over time as the nature pulls the old habit resistance itself. Reinforcement has three dimensions. Recognition, making the new behavior visible and valued through acknowledgement, celebrating, and positive attention. Announceability, embedding the new behavior into performance expectation, team metrics, so that it clearly expects the standards, and the corrective feedback, identifying which behavior is not meeting the new standards and providing the specific constructive guide to close the gap. The most powerful reinforcement mechanism is visible measurement. When the adoption matrix was tracked and shared at a team level, at the department level, at the leadership level, the organization signals that this change is real, permanent, and important. Resistance to change is one of the most mishandled aspects of an organization. The instinctive response of resistance is, especially from leaders, it is to overcome it, to push it harder, to communicate more, to require more compliance. That approach never works. Because the resistance is not obstacle, resistance is information. When the employee or the manager resists to change, they are communicating something precise. They are not at the right place at the ADKAR journey. The resistance is symptom. The ADKAR barrier is the cause. Your job is to identify the cause, not to suppress the symptom. Resistance exists in two forms. Active resistance is visible, voicing objection, escalating concern, refusing to comply, railing colleagues. This form is easier to manage because at least you know it exists. Passive resistance is far more dangerous, appearing to comply with quietly reverting to old behavior, providing inaccurate data, going slow, or creating word around. Organizations often mistake passive resistance for adoption until they look at the business metrics months after go live. The root cause of resistance falls into the 5 categories. Lack of awareness. The individual does not understand why the change is happening and has filled the information gap with the worst case assumption. Lack of trust. The individual does not believe that the leader is actually being honest about the reason of the change or has been hurt by the previous broken commitments. Perceived personal loss. The individual has done their own VIIFM calculation and concluded that this change cost them nothing. Independence, status, skill, relationship, or job security. Individual chain aversion. Some people are genuinely more risk sensitive and need more time and more information and more physiological safety before they can move forward. An organizational history is a change-exhausted organization with a track record of failed effort. Resistance is a rational, safe protection response based on the observed evidence. Understanding the root cause to determine the response. A blanket response of more communication, more training will not work when the root cause is trust or perceived personal threat. You have to match the intention to the diagnosis. Now let us move from diagnosis to response. Here are the 5 techniques that have constant effectiveness in the change management practice. The first technique is structured listening before responding. Before any attempt of address resistance, create deliberate opportunity for the resistance group to be heard. Small group session, facilitated conversation, anonymous pause surveys, or direct manager conversations. The goal is not to collect input and ignore it. The goal is to genuinely understand the specific concern, to demonstrate that it has been heard and to respond it to directly and transparently. The second technique is cooperating resistors as advisors. This is counterintuitive and highly effective. When you invite vocal resistors to participate in the change, to review communication materials, to pilot the new process, to provide feedback on training design, 2 things happen. First, they develop a degree of ownership while something is previously opposed. Second, their specific objection is frequently technically valid and improve the quality of change design. The most vocal critics becomes the most credible advocates when they feel respected, included, and genuinely heard. The third technique is personalizing the WIIFM conversation. Move beyond generic organizational messaging about benefits. In role-specific sessions led by direct manager or employer, helps the employee understand concretely and how this change affects their daily work, what problems it solves for them, what it enables in their career, what friction it eliminates. The fourth technique is building a group of early adopters and peer companions. In every change effort, a subset of group will be naturally enthusiastic. Identify them early, equip them with deeper knowledge and context, and activate them as a peer influence. Peer credibility is more powerful than the operational authority. Employees trust someone who does the same job they do and who has already navigated the change successfully. Engage a sponsor authority for managerial level resistance. When resistance sits with the manager and senior manager level, the change management team cannot resolve it alone. This requires direct peer level engagement from executive sponsors. A senior manager who is privately resistant needs to be heard from someone their own organizational level, with authority and not just data. Communication is a visible output of change management. It is also one of the most constantly underperforming disciplines in the organizational change. Let us correct that. The foundation principle of effective change communication is audience segmentation. Different stakeholder groups need different messages through different channels at different timing from different senders. A communication plan that treats all audience identically is not a strategy. It is a broadcast. The broadcast generate awareness at best. They do not build desire. They do not create knowledge. They do not reinforce ability. For each audience segment, your communication strategy must answer these 5 questions. What does this group needs to know? And at what point of change timeline? What is a specific WIIFM for this specific audience? Who is the most credible sender? Senior leader for the business rationale, direct manager for personal impact, peer companions for practical adoption experience? What channel is the most effective large forum? Team meeting, written update, short videos, one-on-one conversation, and how does this communication creates dialogue rather than one-way information flow? The deepest and the most sustainable form of change adoption occurs when there is genuine alignment between what the organization needs and what individual values. When people can see a meaningful connection between the change they are being asked to support and their own professional growth, they sense the purpose or the quality of the daily work experience. That alignment creates an internal motivation that no external accountability mechanism can replicate. Creating that alignment requires honesty. Not every change is immediate positive for every individual. Requires new skill that feels uncomfortable to develop or alter working relationship that employees have invested years for building. Pretending that alignment exists when it does not breeds resentment and destroys the credibility of the change message. The most effective approach is to acknowledge the real cost of the change, to name what is genuinely difficult while simultaneously helping individuals see the larger picture. How does developing this new capability position them for future opportunities? How does this new improved process reduces the daily friction that currently slows them down? How does this organizational change strengthen the business in the way that ultimately makes their goal more secure and more meaningful? These are also critical destination between internal adoption. Compliance-based adoption happens when the employees perform new behavior because it is measured, because their manager expected it, because no compliance has consequences. It is real adoption in the short term, but it is fragile. The moment external pressure is reduced, compliance-based adoption erodes. Internal adoption happens when individuals genuinely see the value of the change for themselves and choose to engage with it. It is more difficult to build. It requires more sophisticated change management, but it is durable. It sustains itself and depends over time without continuous external enforcement. Building internal adoption is inspiration for high-quality change management, and it brings with taking individual value and goal as seriously as organizational ones. AdCar is diagnostic tool. It is used to identify which specific barrier is blocking adoption, then design a targeted response. Resistance is rational. Identify its root cause before choosing your intervention. Communication must be audience segmented, sender appropriate, content specific, and dialogic. Sponsorship is a single most powerful change success factor. It must be active and visible. Equip your managers before their wider workforce. And sustainable change requires genuine individual organizational alignment. Internal adoption outperforms compliance. The module 1 and 2 give you the individual level capability, the framework, and the technique for understanding and influencing how people move through change. Module 3 is about building the organizational system, deploy those capabilities at scale. This is where change management becomes structurally rigorous. Managing change across a large organization requires more than good intent and strong communication skill. It requires formal plan, structured analysis, integrated governance, and disciplined measurement. Without this organizational system, even the most skilled change management practitioners cannot operate effectively at scale. In this module, we will build the change management plan, the strategic and operational document that integrates every element of the change management approach into a coherent whole. We will conduct a stakeholder analysis and build an engagement strategy based on it. We will use change impact assessment to understand who is affected, in what way, and to what degree. We will design communicated and training plan as integrated AdCar-aligned work streams. We will explore how to integrate change management with the project management lifecycle from inception through sustainment. We will build governance structure that creates accountability. And we will close the change readiness assessment, the tool that transforms change management from a reactive discipline into a proactive one. This module is where strategy becomes structure. After completing this module, you will be able to build a structured change management plan covering all the critical components of the change management approach. We will be able to conduct a stakeholder analysis and design a differentiated engagement strategy based on each group influence level, change impact, and current sentiment. You'll be able to conduct a change impact assessment that identifies which employee group are affected, in what dimension of work, and at what degree. You'll be able to design integrated communication and training plan that is AdCar aligned and audience segmented. You will understand how to integrate change management into project management from the earliest phase through long-term sustainment. You will understand governance model that creates accountability from change management. And you will be able to assess change readiness using leading indicators that allows proactive intervention before go live. These are organizational level change management capabilities. Let us develop them. The change management plan is a master document that translates your change management strategy into structured, executable activity. It is not a project plan. It is an organizational architecture for the people side of the change. A complete change management plan integrates 6 critical components. The first is change management strategy. The overarching approach that defines the level of change management requires based on two factors: the organizational attribute, such as a culture, change history, and leadership alignment, and the change characteristics, such as scope, scale, complexity, and degree of behavioral shift required. Not every change requires the same level of change management intensity. A localized process change in a single department requires a very different approach from the global digital transformation affecting thousands of employees across multiple countries. The second component is the sponsorship roadmap. This document maps that active and visible sponsorship looks like throughout the effort. It identifies who the primary sponsor is and who is the sponsor coalition member, what specific behaviors are expected from each sponsor at each phase of the project, or what coaching or support sponsor need to perform their role effectively. The third component is communication plan. A structured approach of delivering a right message to the right audience at the right time. We will cover communication plan design in detail shortly. The fourth is training plan, addressing knowledge and ability development for each audience segment. This includes identifying training audience, content, format, timing, delivery method, and effectiveness measurement. The fifth is resistance management plan. A proactive strategy that anticipates where resistance is most likely to engage, identifies the probable root cause for each group, and defines the intervention approach for each anticipated resistance source. Proactive resistance planning is far more effective than the reactive resistance response. The sixth is reinforcement plan, defining how adoption will be tracked, how new behavior will be recognized, how accountability will be maintained, and how co-reactive support will be provided during the sustainment period. The change management plan is a living document. It is created early in the project definition phase and updated continuously as project and organization. A plan built after go live is not a plan. It is crisis management. Stakeholder analysis is the analytical foundation of fourth change management strategy. Without a structured understanding of who is affected, how they are affected, what they currently think about the change, and how much influence they have over the adoption outcome, you are designing your entire change management approach blind. Effective stakeholder analysis evaluates four dimensions of each group. First, the nature of their change impact. What specifically changes for them in terms of process, system, responsibility, skill, relationship, or working condition. Second, their current awareness and sentiments. Do they know about the change? Are they supportive, neutral, uncertain, or resistant? Third, their influence level. How much power do they have to accelerate or block adoption, either through positional authority, informal peer credibility? Fourth, their change history. How they responded to the previous organizational change efforts, and what does that tell us about their likely response to this one. The output of stakeholder analysis is a stakeholder map. A structured representation of each group's current position requires position, influence level, and the gap that change management activities need to close. Engagement strategy is designed from the map. High influence, low support stakeholder require more intensive engagement, direct conversations, early involvement in design decisions, dedicated sponsorship outcomes, and tailored communication. High influence, high support stakeholder need to be activated as a companions. Low influence group can be managed through programmatic communication and training. A critical principle in stakeholder management is that the coalition of change sponsors must mirror the organizational scope of the change. If the change affects sales, operations, finance, the sponsor coalition must include credible senior leader from each of those functions. A change led effectively by a sponsor from a single function creates an implicit signal that change is not equally prioritized across the organization. The adoption rates in unrepresented function reflects exactly that. The change impact assessment is one of the most analytically powerful tools in the change management toolkit, and that one of the most underused. Its purpose is to systematically identify which employee group is affected by the change and what is the dimension of their work and to what degree of disruption. This information directly drives the change management resource allocation. More deeply impacted groups need more intensive support. A structured change impact assessment examines 5 dimensions of impact for each employee group. Process impact, which current workflows are changing, which will be discontinued, and which new process will be introduced. Technology impact. What system, tool or platform are changing and how significantly? Role impact. Are job responsibility, decision-making authority, reporting structure or performance expectation? People impact. Are this organizational restructure, location changes, team complication changes or headcount implication? The last one is behavioral and mindset impact. What culture shifts, attitudinal changes, or leadership behaviors are required to make the change sustainable? For each dimension and each employee group, the degree of impact is rated low, medium, high. Group in high impact across multiple dimensions requires the most intensive change management support, more communication, touch points, longer training timelines, greater management coaching investment, and more proactive resistance. The change impact assessment also serves a critical governance function. It is an evidence base for the change management resourcing decisions. When a practitioner requests 3 months of intensive support for the specific employee group, the change impact assessment provides a date that justifies that engagement. Without it, resourcing requests sounds like option. With it, they sound like professional judgment backed by audience. Conduct the change impact assessment during the project design phase and update it as solution design evolves. Technical design changes frequently have downstream implications for the people impact that must be recalibrated. A communication plan is a strategic document, not a calendar of emails. It maps who needs what information, from whom, through what channel, and at what point of change timeline. And that is what indicates ADKAR outcome. The most effective communication plans are built backward from ADKAR. For each audience segment, ask what does this group need in order to achieve awareness? What do they need to hear? From whom? And at what format to build a desire? What information supports knowledge as they enter training? What job aids and performance support resources build ability during the adoption period? And what recognition and feedback mechanism reinforce continued adoption? Building the plan backward from these questions create a communication architecture that is purposefully linked to the adoption outcome, rather than a content calendar that simply tracks what has been sent. Structurally, every entry in the communication plan specifies the target audience, the key message, the intended ADKAR outcome, the sender, the channel, the approximate timing, the mechanism of two-way response or dialogue. The training plan addresses the knowledge and the ability element of ADKAR for each audience segment. It identifies who is training, on what content, at what depth, through what method, at what timing relative to go live, and how training effectiveness will be measured. Method decision in change-oriented training should be deliberated. Instructor-led training is most effective for complex, judgment-based content that benefits from discussion, question, and conceptual application. E-learning works well for the foundational knowledge that is consistent across large groups. Job aids and performance support tools are critical during the adoption period when the employees need reference support in the moment. The peer coaching or on-the-job support is more often the most effective ability development mechanism. Communication and training must be sequenced together. Employees need to understand why they are changing before they are taught how to change. Training delivered before awareness creates confusion and resistance. Awareness without supporting training creates anxiety. The two work streams must be coordinated as a single adoption journey, not managed as separate work packages. One of the most important structured principles in the organizational change management is life cycle integration. Change management that is built after the project is completed is not a change management, it is a damage control. The project life cycle typically moves from 5 phases: defining the need, clarifying the situation, developing the solution, implementing the solution, sustaining outcome. Change management activities must be mapped to every phase, running as a parallel and integrated work stream from the very beginning. In the definition phase, each change management establishes the strategy and begins stakeholder assessments. This is when the primary sponsor is formally engaged and the initial change impact scope is understood, and the overall change management approach is inclined with the project chapter. In the clarification phase, the full stakeholder analysis is completed and the change management plan is built. Communication to the affected group begins, even before the solution is finished. Employees who are informed during the design process feel respected and involved. Employees who are told about the decision only after all decisions have been made feel that the context and concern were irrelevant to the design. In the development phase, training content is designed and built. Communication continues. Pilot groups are identified and sponsors and manager coaching begins. This is when the project side of the change is being constructed in the parallel as a technical solution. In the implication phase, training is delivered just in time. The full communication strategy executes, adoption metrics begin to be tracked, resistance management moves to active deployment. In the sustaining phase, reinforcement mechanism activates, adoption data drives ongoing intervention, and the change management function begins transferring responsibility to business as usual structures. Lifecycle integration means the change management lead and the project management work as a genuine partner. Shared risk resistance, aligned milestones, integrated planning. When these two work streams are disconnected, the technical and the human element of the change arrives to go live out of sync. The solution is ready, the people are not. Or the people are trained, but the solution is not ready to support their new behaviors. Either scenarios destroy momentum. Change governance refers to the accountability structure and decision-making authority that ensures that the change stays on track from the people adoption perspective. Effective governance typically involves 3 layers. At the top layer, a change steering committee. Senior leaders who review adoption process at regular intervals, make resourcing decisions when gaps are identified, and visibly signal organizational properties for the change. In the middle, change management team. The practitioners responsible for executing the plan, and at the front line, the manager network, the people who are closest to the adoption group and who are accountable for the team level result. The governance structure creates visibility. When adoption data is reviewed at the leadership level of the regular cycle, the organization is positioned to intervene early, deploying additional communication or activating sponsor engagement rather than discovering adoption failure after the fact. Change leadership model vary by organizational context. Centralized model plays a dedicated change management function at the organizational level, with authority and method that spans the enterprises. Distributed models embed change management capabilities within businesses units, supported by the Center of Excellence that provides standards and tools. Hybrid model combines both. The right model depends on the volume and complexity of change in the organization, the majority of the change management function, and the degree of which change management is treated as a strategic discipline versus project resource. Change readiness assessment closes this section, and it represents one of the most valuable contributions change management makes to the project risk management. Change readiness measures the degree to which the targeted group is prepared to adopt before the change go live. It evaluates the ADCAT process for each audience group. Where are they in their individual change journey? And what gap remain that must be closed before go live? A group that is at awareness but has not yet built desire is not ready to receive training. The group that has completed training but has not yet practiced opportunities has not yet built ability. Go live readiness should be assisted across both dimensions. Is the technical solution ready? And are the people ready? Both must reach an acceptable level before implementation. When organizations treat only the technical dimension as a go live gate, they discover the people gap in the week after deployment, when it is far more expensive to address. Welcome to the final module. Let us consolidate the organizational change management architecture from Module 3. We built the change management plan, the strategic document that integrates sponsorship, communication, training, resistance management, and reinforcement. We conducted stakeholder analysis and designed differentiated engagement strategies. We used a change impact assessment to identify who is affected and how deeply, providing the evidence based on the resourcing decisions. We designed communication and training plan as ADCAR aligned, audience segmented work streams. We established that change management must integrate with project management lifecycle from the definition phase, not after go live. We built governance structure for visibility and accountability. And we introduced change readiness assessment as a tool that shifts change management from reactive to proactive. Now we will move to the final chapter, sustaining change outcome after go live and building the organizational foundation for a long-term change excellence. And that is Module 4. After completing this module, you will be able to design a post-go live reinforcement strategy with a specific mechanism of recognition, accountability, and corrective feedback. You will be able to build an adoption tracking framework using both leadership indicator, which predicts which adoption is going, and lagging indicator, which measures where it is arrived. You will understand the KPI architecture for change success, covering both business performance metrics and people adoption matrices. And you will be able to build a change management dashboard. You will be able to design a continuous feedback and improvement loop that allows change management approach to evolve based on the evidence rather than the assumptions. You will understand how to embed change into organizational culture through leadership modeling, system alignment, and organizational storytelling. You'll be able to apply the complete change management framework to the real-world organizational scenarios. And you'll be able to explain the components of long-term change management capability, building strategy for your organization. These are the capabilities that distinguish change management leaders. Let us develop them. Reinforcement is most consistently underinvested element in organizational change management. The assumption, almost universal, is that the change is complete when the project goes live. Training is done, communication is done, the system is running, the time moves to the next effort. The reality is that the adoption journey has barely begun at go live. The behavioral consolidation that delivers business value, the point at which a new way of working becomes habitual, proficient, and organizational standard, and without active reinforcement throughout this period, the investment in the entire change effort is at risk. Reinforcement operates through three different mechanisms. Recognition is a mechanism that makes a new behavior visible and valued. When employees who are demonstrating the new process using the new system correctly or modeling in a new leadership behavior receive visible acknowledgement, whether in a team meeting, organizational communication, or leadership conversation, the organizational sends a signal that this behavior matters. What gets recognized gets repeated. Recognition does not require a formal reward programs. It requires deliberate action and acknowledgement. Accountability structure are the organizational mechanism that makes the new behavior an expected standard rather than an optional choice. This means incorporating adoption behavior into performance management process. This means having a manager's reference the change explicitly in a regular one-to-one conversation. It means tracking adoption metrics at the team level and making them visible to the leadership. Accountability is not punitive. It is clarifying. When employees understand that their adoption will be observed and discussed, they allocate attention accordingly. Corrective feedback is one of the most technically demanding reinforcement mechanisms. It requires identifying throughout observation, system data, audit, or performance matrices where behavior is not meeting the required standards and providing specific, constructive, non-judgmental guidance to close the gap. The quality of corrective feedback determines whether a performance gap is a temporary learning curve or a permanent adoption failure. Managers must be equipped to provide this feedback effectively, which is a coaching skill that typically requires deliberate development. Build your reinforcement plan before go live. Define the recognition mechanism. Define the accountability structure. Define the corrective feedback process. Define the review schedule. Reinforcement is not an throughout. It is a mechanism that converts a successful go live into a sustained organizational transformation. Tracking adoption and use cases matrices. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. Adoption measurement is an analytical discipline that transforms change management from intuition to evidence. And it is how change management professionals earn credibility with the project and business stakeholder who controls resources. Adoption matrices falls into two categories: leading indicators and lagging indicators. Understanding the distinction and building the measurement framework that uses both is a core practitioner capability. Leading indicators are forward-looking signal that tells you where adoption is trending before it arrives. They measure the ADKAR journey, where is each group in this progression forward full adoption. Example, including training completion rate, which indicates whether the knowledge building infrastructure is reaching its target audience on schedule. Awareness survey score measured at defined point is a change timeline. Indicates whether the communication strategy is achieving its intended outcome. Desire indicators. Manager's engagement score sentiment survey, focus group feedback, whether the motivation to support change is building or eroding. And change readiness assessment score in the week before to go live tells whether the group is prepared to adopt before they are asked to. Leading indicators are the early warning system. When training completion is below target 4 weeks before go live, you have a time to intervene, to add session, to address scheduling barriers, to increase management accountability for team completion. If you wait until you measure to go live, you have already lost the window of effective intervention. Lagging indicators measure actual adoption after it has or not has occurred. System utilization data. How many users are logged in, performing the expected transition, using the system correctly, is the most lagging indicator for technology changes. Process completion matrix measure whether a new process is being followed consistently or whether legacy workaround has re-emerged. Productivity matrix, error rate, cycle times, and system satisfaction score measure whether the change is delivering the business outcome it has designed to create. The combination of leading and lagging indicators create a complete adoption and measurement framework. Leading indicators enable proactive engagement. Lagging indicators drive business accountability. Measure both, review both, make both visible to sponsor and governance structure. Change management KPIs operate at two levels: business performance matrix and people adoption matrix. Both are essential. Measuring only one gives an incomplete and often misleading picture of change success. Business performance matrix measure whether the change delivered its intended organizational value. For technology implementation, these might include process effectiveness gain, error rate reduction, or cost reduction attribution to a new system. For a cultural or behavioral change, they might include employees' engagement score, customer satisfaction improvement, or retention matrices. For the structural reorganization, they might include decision-making speed, cross-functional collaboration effectiveness, or market response time. Business matrices are the ultimate justification for the change management investment. When change management is well done, the business matrices improve and the projected ROI of the transformation is realized. When change management is inadequate, business metrics disappoint. Even when technical solution is excellent, the correlation is consistent. Adoption drives value realization and change management drives adoption. People adoption metrics measure whether the human adoption goal are achieved. ADKAR progress score tracks through periodic survey that assess whether each group in the 5-element journey provide the most direct measure of adoption health. Training effectiveness matrices, knowledge retention assessment, skill demonstration result, post-training performance observation measure whether knowledge has transferred successfully. Adoption velocity measures how quickly the target group moves from the critical awareness to proficient, consistent performance. And the employees' experience matrices during the change period measures the organizational cost of the transition. Because major change effort has a direct impact on engagement, and the impact should be measured and not just endured. The most sophisticated change management approaches integrates the business and the people matrices into a single change performance dashboard, reviewed by project sponsors on the regular schedule. When business matrices are underperforming, people matrices identify which ADKAR element is a specific barrier, enabling target intervention rather than a generic response. The integrated approach transforms change management into a driven performance measurement discipline, which is exactly where we belong. The change management plan built at the starting of the project is built on assumptions. Assumptions about how audience will respond to the communication, about which training method will be the most effective, about pace at which different group will progress through ADKAR. Some of those assumptions will be correct. Many of them will be not. Continuous feedback and the improvement loop is the mechanism that allows your change management approach to evolve in a real time, replacing assumptions with evidence as the effort progresses. The loop has 4 different stages. First is measure. Measure collects data on adoption progress, ADKAR status, training effectiveness, manager engagement, and business transformation matrices at regular, defined intervals. Then we have analyze. Analyze, interpret the data to understand whether the plan is performing in the intended and where it is not. Identify the specific gap, Is awareness incomplete? Is the desire lower than expected in the specific group? Is the training not building capability effectively? And then we have adapt. Adapt modifies the change management plan based on the analysis. Then we have communicate. Communicate, share what you have heard. What are you learning? And what are you adjusting with the sponsors, managers, and project teams? The communication step is the most frequently skipped and the most strategically valuable. When you share the learning transparently and explain what you are doing in response, you demonstrate organizational responsiveness. You build trust with the affected group. You signal that the change management is not a static script, but an adaptive evidence based on discipline. Run the loop on the schedule appropriate to the pace and complexity of the change. For the high-speed, high-stake implementation, a weekly review cycle may be necessary. For long-term transformation program, monthly cycle with quarterly deep dive are often appropriate. What matters is discipline, consistent measurement, consistent analysis, consistent adaptation, consistent communication. The deepest possible measure of change success is when the new behavior is no longer perceived as a change. It is simply how an organization works. That is the definition of the cultural embedding. And it is an ultimate objective of sustained change management. Organizational culture is a collection of shared beliefs, values, behavioral norms, and unwritten rules that governs how the work gets done. Culture is not communicated through policy documents or organizational values statement. It is transmitted through observable leadership behavior, through what gets recognized and rewarded. Through the stories, people tell what success looks like in the organization, and through the system that creates incentives and accountability. Embedding change into culture requires 4 deliberate actions. First, connect to the change to the existing organizational value. When a new behavior can be positioned as an expression of something the organization already believes in, rather than a departure from it, the physiological distance employees need to travel is shorter. If the organization values the customer force, and the change create better customer data visibility, make that correction explicit, repeated, and concrete. Second, ensure consistent leadership modeling. This is the most powerful cultural signal available. Culture follows what leaders do, not what they say. If the senior leader publicly endorses change, but privately operates in the old way, using the old system, bypassing the new progress, reverting to the pre-change behavior under pressure, the organization will follow the behavior and discount the words. Visible, consistent, and behavioral alignment from every leader is a sponsor collaboration. In the sponsor coalition is a non-negotiable foundation for cultural embedding. Third, align organizational system with a new behavior. Performance management criteria should include a new behavior as a explicit expectations. Hiring profiles should include the capabilities the new culture requires. Onboarding programs for a new employee should introduce the changed way of working as organizational standard, not as a recent effort in a still progress. When the organizational system point in the same direction as the change, the new behavior becomes the self-reinforcement. Fourth, organizational storytelling deliberately. Every culture has defining narratives, stories that capture what the organization values at its best. Curate and amplify stories about how the change is enabling real success in real people. A frontline employee who resolved a customer issue faster than the new system. A manager whose team achieved a significant improvement in performance because of the new process. These stories are not just anecdotes, they are cultural signals. They define what success looks like in a new environment and invite the others to follow. The highest ambition of organizational change management is not successfully execute a single effort. It is built on organization that is genuinely good at change. The one that has the people, the process, the tools, the culture to navigate transformation as a core organizational capability rather than a periodic crisis. Building a long-term change capability requires sustained investment in 5 areas. First one is people capability. Developing a group of trained change management professionals inside the organization, practitioners who know methodology, have applied in the real effort, and can lead change management work without relying on external consultants. It means building a change management awareness in project managers, HR business partners, and organizational development professionals, so that the change consideration are embedded in the work is planned at every level. And it means developing change leadership capability in senior managers, leading their sponsorship effectiveness through targeted coaching and development programs. And now we are going to talk about methodology standardization. This means adopting a shared change management approach across the organization. A common framework, a common language, a common toolkit that creates a consistency and enable knowledge accumulation. When every team that has applied the framework can learn from every other team's experience because they are using the same model, the same diagnostic question, and the same measurement approach. The organizational capability to compound over the time. And then we have process integration. This means embedding the change management into the project governance as a standard requirement. Every effort above defined complexity or the impact level should require a change management plan, a qualified change management practitioner, and a people readiness assessment before going live. This is not optional and it is not a soft recommendation. It is an operational standard quantified in the project management. Embedding technologies. This means investing in a tool that supports change management at the organizational scale. Stakeholders communication platform, learning management system, and digital channels that enable two-way dialogue with a large group in a real time. Which leading indicator proved most predictive? What resistant pattern was most challenging? And what reinforcement mechanism was not effective? This institutional knowledge transfers each effort into an investment in the future organizational capabilities rather than one-time expenditure. Organizations that build change capability at this level develops a sustained competitive advantage. They adapt faster than the competitors, they execute a strategic effort with the higher reliability, they experience low change fatigue and higher employee support, and they realize the intended business value of their transformation investment at the rate that constantly outperform organizations that treat the change management as overhead. This is the promise to this discipline, and building it systematically, professionally, and most importantly, persistently is one of the most valued contribution any leader or practitioner can make to the organization. Let us now apply the complete change management framework we have built across these courses to a realistic organizational scenario. The scenario is a financial service organization with 600 employees is replacing 3 legacy customer management systems with a single cloud-based platform. The effort has 18 months timeline. It is sponsored by a chief commercial officer. The primary impacted group is the sales organization, approximately 200 employees across 8 regions, the customer service teams, and regional management. And how does the structured change management approach address this? Step 1. Access the change with the large scale. Technology-driven, across-functional effort requiring significant behavioral change in how customer-facing professionals manage relationships and data. The scope of the impact is broad. The timeline is substantial. The behavioral shift required is significant. These warrants a comprehensive change management approach. Step 2. The sales organization is the primary adoption group. Their anticipated outcome profile, awareness is moderate. They know the change is coming, but the specific implications are unclear. Desire is concern. Experienced salesperson who is hitting their target with existing tool will ask why this change is necessary. Ability will be challenged. Migrating year of customer relationship data and behavior pattern to a new platform is cognitively demanding. Regional managers are the critical influence group. Their alignment, their resistance will cascade directly to the team. Early engagement involves the design, discipline, and explicit VIIFM communication tailored to the specific concern to the end. Step 3. Change management plan. Sponsor collision includes the CCO and the regional commercial leader from each of the 8 regions. Communication strategy is region-specific, manager-delivered, and WIIFM focused for the sales professionals. Training is differentiated by roles, sales, service, management tracks, and each with role-specific content and timing. Resistance management plans anticipates pushback from high performers who fear productivity disruption with a specific plan for early involvement and peer companion activation. Step 4. Life cycle integration. Change management begin in the project definition phase. Affected groups are informed and consulted during the solution design problem. Communication builds from awareness through desire and design progress. Training deploys close to go live. Reinforcement begin to go live and continues to 6 months. Step 5. Measurement and reinforcement. Training completion at score system utilization, sales performance matrices are tracked at binary leadership review. Targeted reinforcement is deployed in the region or teams where the adoption is lagging. Recognition highlights early adoption success story across the organization. This scenario demonstrates the full framework in action, from strategic assessment through organizational execution through sustained measurement. This is what professional level change management looks like in practice. Change management does not fail because of the bad idea. It fails because people do not adopt the new way of working. Delivering a solution is not a success. Adoption and sustained behavior in the change success. Organizations do not change. People do. And every strategy, every plan, and every communication must start from the truth. The ADKAR model is not just a framework. It is a diagnostic lens. When the change is struggling, it tells you exactly where to look at and exactly what to fix. Resistance is not your enemy. It is an information. The moment you stop trying to overcome it, you will start trying to understand it, and your effectiveness as a change management leader will increase drastically. Leadership is the engine of change management, not tool, not process, not system. What leaders do, say, visually commit is a single greatest predictor of whether the change management will succeed or fail. Communication is not an announcement. It is a sustained, targeted, two-way strategy that must be trusted, answered real questions, and speak to the people actually take care about the change management. Change management must begin at the very starting of the project, not at the end of the project. The earlier we start it, the more value it will create. Sustaining change where the real work happens. Go live is not a finishing point. It's a starting point of behavioral consolidation that delivers the actual business value. And finally, the change management is not an overhead. It is a discipline that determines whether the investment your organization makes in the transformation actually will deliver the results or not. Those are the principles. And taken together, they represent a fundamental different way of thinking about how organizations move ahead.